or Periscope. No, Periscope is no more. My bad. Hello, interwebs, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. My name is Frank Lavinia. You can follow me at the URLs below, franksworld.com, datadriven.tv, impactquantum.com. And I want to talk a little bit today, not for too long, because um, it is the end of the day, but I want to talk about the metaverse. And this was really something that's been kind of on my mind for some time. And if you um, check out my, let's see, where is it? Um, Recent article on my LinkedIn newsletter called Frank Digs Data. And I kind of go into kind of my history with VR. Although I did leave some parts out. When I say I've been in or tinkering with VR for a while. I've been tinkering with it for a while. So I actually found this book. So if you never heard of VRML, don't feel bad. VRML was the virtual reality markup language. It was meant to be a kind of a virtual reality way to replicate kind of HTML. And it kind of had its ebbs and its flows, just like the VR and metaverse technology has had throughout the years. And we are currently kind of on a upswing of another hype cycle. And in this article, I kind of talk about, some of the other hype cycles I'd been through with VR. And at every hype cycle, what do they say? No, 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 this time it's different. Well, obviously you can read the whole thing, but kind of here's where I think it is actually different this time. Now, I'm still on the fence of whether or not it's enough to be different this time for a different outcome. But here's what I'm thinking. Well, first off, right now is something that you never really had. We've had the most amount of bandwidth penetration than we ever had in history. So there's definitely that. And for the first time, there's a consumer friendly VR gear on the market. Specifically, I'm talking about the Oculus Quest or Meta Quest or whatever they call it now. For about $200 to $300, you can get a setup that is pretty well polished and designed to get going. Now, granted, I am a technical person, so when I say it's a polished setup, I mean, I run Linux, right? So, but I did notice that it has when I did set up my Oculus Quest, if you have a Facebook account, it's actually pretty smooth setup to get going and start using it. And it's pretty easy to figure out. There's a really cool tutorial kind of experience and things like that. It feels like a well-made product because it is, and it's about $300. That's less than many new smartphone models. Now that I say that, no, there's my phone. I start freaking out because I can't find my phone. Right. So that's never been the case, right? Prior to this, well, a HoloLens is $3,000 to $6,000, right? Um, I forget. I think when I last saw it, I guess it was employee pricing. It was gonna be about $3,000 out of pocket to get with that. That's not a good consumer device price point. Not today, right? I mean, I'm sure once gas gets to like $10 a gallon, all the prices will go up. But for now, it's not a good price point. Um, There is, because love it or hate it, Oculus Quest is attached to Facebook, right? Facebook has a pretty good platform and a pretty good developer ecosystem. In fact, even if you don't um, use the native apps, you can plug it into your PC or Mac. I haven't tried it on a Mac, and you can play VR games, kind of stream through it. Um, so there's already kind of this developer game here. And I think that this is kind of the big point here. The pandemic and post pandemic, how we socialized, how we actually gather in crowds, it's not going to be this way forever, but it's going to change. It's going to change how we look at things. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. I mean, pandemics happen about once a century. And my maternal grandmother, who did survive through it, was always kind of a germaphobe, basically. And I know that my kids are going to pick up some of that because that's just the world we live in. They recently masks are now optional. And depending on the day, some of the kids will still want to wear masks or not. It's just an interesting psychological study, I suppose. However, does that all matter? And here's why I don't think that even matters, right? I mean, all those things are true, right? Broadband, consumer friendly price point, consumer friendly gear and setup, not beer, gear and setup, a good developer ecosystem, and kind of the nature of how we socialize has changed. And there's more of a demand for kind of these virtual experiences. Um, but here's kind of the key: the metaverse is already here. Just ask your kids, or if you don't have kids, ask anybody under 15 in your life. Um, they have lived through the pandemic and some very crucial times in their lives. If you think back to your own life, like that kind of that, that childhood, it's been altered, if not outright disrupted. But I look at how my kids interact now with virtual spaces, right? Primarily Roblox. Roblox is kind of the big kahuna in terms of games in our house. And what I find interesting is hearing my kids talk to each other about the same game. They refer to places in game or in Roblox or in um, as physical places. Like to them, it's not in game, right? It's kind of, I mean, if you play, I played a lot of Grand Theft Auto, a lot of games like that. There's like this mental model of a fake Los Angeles kind of in my head, like, oh, it's past this or whatever, where you can find certain things. I think Venice Beach or Vespucci Beach. Same thing for the New York City version of it, right? There's Bohan instead of the Bronx. There's I think Alderney instead of New Jersey. Um, there's kind of that mental map, but to me, I see that as a virtual world because it's very distinct and very separate. But to them, it's not. It's just another place in a virtual space, and it's a very tiny distinction, but I think it's a crucial distinction. And I'm fascinated at the way they refer to things like, oh, you got to go behind this, and to them, it's real. When they call, they call their friends or they message with their friends, and they go and they have a play date kind of in virtual space. It's not the same, I know, but given that people don't want people in other people's homes as much as they used to, and there's no playground, and the normal order of things have kind of changed. I suspect that these kids are going to take that experience in the very formative years of their lives and move it forward to where there's going to be no or very minor distinction. I mean, there's always going to be some distinction, but it's going to be meaningless. There used to be a time when people would talk about oh, my online personality and my offline personality in the real world. You don't hear that as much anymore. Now obviously there you talk about Instagram, you see the highlight reel on Instagram, right? And that there's all sorts of things about that, but for the most part there's this sense that the two online world and the offline world, there is a distinction, but it's kind of meaningless now. It's kind of like why. It's kind of like left Twix or right Twix if you've seen those ads. And if you're not familiar with this, there's a candy ad. There's this candy that comes two in a pack, and they started this whole campaign of well, this side of the package was made in this factory, and this side of the package was made this factory, and um, people have their preference. They're the same thing. They're all made in the same factory. It's kind of a pointless distinction. It's kind of funny, but the point I'm trying to make is that these kids, as they get older, as they enter the workforce, as they get education, go through the educational system, um, they are going to look at virtual and real with very different eyes than the way we look at it. Their experiences are going to be markedly different than how people our age, right, or my age, or millennial, or maybe Gen Z. I don't know what the cutoff is for Gen Z, but if you're kind of, it's a sliding scale, basically. And I think it's interesting. So the neighborhood, right, they used to meet at the playground, right? I know when I was a kid, we used to go, play stickball or whatever. We'd ride our bikes and, go to the playground. And, you know, um, where I live now, it's, you would have play dates or you'd meet at the playground, or, you'd have to be driven everywhere, but that's another discussion. But to them, they like the virtual thing because they can start and stop anytime they want. They don't have to be out all day, which I know is I have mixed feelings about that. But during the pandemic, there was no choice. So the ability to just play with, potentially any kid around the world. Obviously, there's some safety concerns there too. I do find it fascinating the way that my kids look at virtual spaces is markedly different than the way I look at them. And I've been playing around with this stuff for a while. And maybe that's why I don't look at it with the same eyes. For me, I think back to VRML, right? I had some VRML on my site. It was silly stuff, it was stupid stuff, but you could go through this virtual space. I went through when Adobe Atmosphere was around. I went through and I built places, right? I built these experiences. I built a Wild West town, right? I built a virtual World Trade Center. I talk about that in the article. And I built what else I built? I built a Wild West town. I built um, um, World Trade Center, and the third world I built, I forget exactly what it was, but it was kind of I was messing around with the physics engine because they actually added the Havoc physics engine to Adobe Atmosphere. So you'd be able to script something, and I had like this little bowling alley and the stuff you can kind of like throw. Now, what's interesting is for some people, when you hear virtual reality, you think, goggles and stuff like that. But to these kids, I don't think it matters. I mean, you could, I haven't seen it yet. Somebody let me know in the comments if this has been done where you can play Roblox with, kind of 360 immersive experience. But to them, the monitor and kind of going through on the iPad and to them, it is already an immersive experience. So it's interesting because to them, those places are real in their head. Like I've seen my kid try to teach me how to play one game, and I'm like, what is going on? I even live streamed it, right? So to them, it's real. And it's not real in the sense they know it's like on the computer, but to them, the notion of reality is a bit different than folks that didn't grow up with this technology. So that's kind of it. I mean, last night was really kind of my aha moment. Like I've had a lot of aha moments about AR. I mean VR, but um the big aha moment was this game called Gorilla Tag. I don't understand it. My kids were talking about it. My kid actually, my older son actually installed it on my headset. And the younger one saw a YouTuber play it, and I don't get it. I maybe there's something I'm missing. The thing I didn't like about it is that the you couldn't turn off the mic, so anything you said was broadcast in the game, and other people same thing. So I mean, I'm not going to let them play it because I heard a lot of cursing, and it's weird. Like you basically play this gorilla and you kind of like move around with your hands and you kind of go through. I think it's an obstacle course. I don't know. But what kind of annoyed me was like I heard other people. I know they hear me. I couldn't find controls to mute myself because I think that's a privacy thing. I'm sorry. Um, but I want to be able to control, just like in a Zoom call, right? Or a Teams call or, whatever you use. I want to be able to control when my mic is hot. Um, so I couldn't find a control for that. Um, the other thing was weird was there was this other player that kept basically following me around and like standing in my face, and he had a wrench in. I don't know who or what it was. Had this avatar had like a wrench in his hand, and he kept like jamming the wrench in my face like that, and I was just like, dude, get away. And I would move around, and then and then he would follow, put his wrench in his face, and then I'd put my hands in his face, and I guess I could have said something, but and I guess I could have reported him, but that just seems kind of weird. It was interesting. So for them, and you heard the kids playing and stuff like that. For them, it was a real game. It was a real place. It was a real space. But it was just kind of interesting, and I think it's an interesting commentary on humanity that it didn't feel real until somebody was annoying you. The fans in your face. It was a very strange experience. That's all I'll say. But that was kind of my aha moment. And I was like, I decided to write about kind of, the curious case of VR. And the ultimate thing here is that not a lot of technologies, I mean, a lot of technologies get my attention, but very few technologies sustain my attention over decades. I first started playing around with VRML in 1996. 1996. Uh, about a year after I had Frank's World started, right? And I think even VRML 2 was the second, obviously was the second one, but this book is so old that it has a included CD. CD is long gone, but I still have the little plastic bit that it would go into. So to see my kids kind of like get into this is, as a parent, kind of exciting. But I also know that their perspective of the technology is going to be a bit different, because to them, they just grew up with it. Like, we saw a jukebox over the weekend, a jukebox. So for those who don't know, you used to put money into a jukebox, you select a song, and it would play on the speakers. Um, Usually at like diners or, bars or whatever. Um, how do you explain what a jukebox is? And I was like, well, it's kind of like an iPod, but before iPods. Well, and my kids are young enough, they'd never seen an actual iPod. So I had to explain it's like a phone or whatever that plays music that they got. So it's interesting to see the march of technology and their perspective on this be very different than folks that might remember cassette tapes or jukeboxes, or, calling into the radio station or Z100 in New York and hoping to hear your song. And it would usually take about an hour, honestly. Now, I mean, I can call up my voice assistant, Alexa, play this, and she'll do it. Um, Cancel. See, she's very eager. So no, Alexa, stop. Okay. Got to be careful what you say around your devices. But that's kind of my thinking here, is that it's just going to be interesting, because as I look at this technology, and I've talked through this with some other influencer folks, technology smart people, and I'm like, you know, I, I want to believe that this is going to be the time, in terms of, will gloves and goggles be kind of a commonplace, or, sticks and goggles. I don't know if this is the time, if that's going to catch on, but the metaverse is already real, because you look at the way these kids, they play Roblox. It's real to them. My kids ask for their allowance in Robux, right? It's money they can only spend in this virtual space. And what do they spend it on? They spend it on upgrades in games. They spend it on, extra ammo or extra whatever, or even clothing. Right. It's very interesting to see kind of how this works. How is that going to trickle out to the rest of the web, to the rest of the industry, as these consumers, as these kids kind of grow up, enter the workforce, and influence purchase decisions? I find it very fascinating, to be truthful with you. And I also think it was interesting that, this Gorilla game, or Gorilla Tag, or Monkey Tag, is this hot game amongst these kids. I don't get it. I mean, it looked like I was a monkey and I could go through an outside playground. And I don't get it, because why don't you just go to a real playground? And then I realized, well, the pandemic kind of killed that. So I think that the pandemic is going to have long lasting impact on how these kids see the world, how they see themselves, how they see interacting with other people. And what's interesting is, to them, that's fun, right? I mean, I remember when I was a kid playing Atari, some adults just didn't get it. They didn't understand why I would watch this little blip go by and be playing on that. She should be playing outside. You know, um, I don't know. Did I have was that my get off my lawn moment? I actually liked the little monkey game, but I just didn't like the dude shoving the wrench in my face. Like, and it was virtual; it didn't hurt or anything. It was just annoying. Like, dude, I'm trying to like walk around, and somebody's like shoving a wrench in your face. It was very bizarre, and that's what kind of inspired me to write this article. Like, it had me thinking. That kind of when your brain is still, your body's trying to go to sleep. I have all these like thoughts, like, what is the deal with VR? Like, how did we get here? How do we get from, you know, the failure of VRML2, or the cancellation of Adobe Atmosphere, to Second Life's kind of rise and then rapid fall, um, to getting a device that's owned by Facebook, right? Social networking companies that productize this, and you have only to have somebody shove a wrench in a virtual monkey shove a virtual wrench in your face. That is surreal. I mean, think about that. Like, no one, if I wrote that in science fiction, no one would believe me. It's stranger, truth truly is stranger than fiction. But I mean, the short of it is that it's just an interesting take on it. And then, in terms of virtual reality, what does that mean? Does it have to mean the gloves? Does it have to mean the immersive experience that does head tracking and all that? Not necessarily. I would posit that the metaverse is already here, and need to look no further than Roblox to find an example of that. And I know there's other games too. Minecraft certainly has a certain aspect of that virtual space where you can collaborate with people, play with play against or with people. I know it's not just Roblox. It's just that Roblox seems to be the one that has everyone's attention, and there's an ecosystem of people building experiences and games inside of Roblox that to the kids are just as real as their the playground at their school. It's fascinating to me. And that's what fascinates me. And I think we're going to hear a lot more about this in the future. Now, is it going to be the Oculus Quest that kind of drives us over the line and makes this a common consumer product? I don't know. Is Apple going to put something out there that's also going to drive this? Yeah, I mean, Apple is at a position where they can, they are running the risk of running behind on this. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. But that's all I got for today. I just want to say thank you for watching. If you're watching this live, if you have any questions or comments, put it in the whatever platform you are below, and be sure to reach out to me on various social media platforms on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Frank Diggs Data, and you've been watching me talk about virtual reality and in a bit of a stream of consciousness kind of way. You have a fantastic day.